Hello everyone. In today's video I would like to start with a question. Do you think that this fly can substitute pheasant tail? Simple as that. Now, apart from this rather rhetorical question, I would like to show you a couple of techniques how I make this fly and why I do things while I'm tying them the way I actually do. So let's get into techniques first. So I will start with a tail because how I mount the tail and when. After the tail I'm doing the ribbing, well, the wire, and then the dubbing, and then ribbing the fly. So I will explain why I do each step the way I do it, because everything has a purpose, everything has a goal, and the ultimate goal is to make a proper fly that will catch your fish, but that will also make you happy to look at. I really believe that when we make flies that we believe in, we will actually catch more fish on those flies. So I will also explain how I make those legs, because it's kind of unconventional way. Thorax, whip finish, I will explain every step. So let's get into tying. So when it comes to materials, I will talk first about tail. It's rather very common material. It's rooster feather, grizzly color, just the same. You can use cocktailian, obviously. In this case I'm using rooster's feather because it was literally next to me. Then for the wire I'm using ultra wire in tan color because I like the contrasting effect colors are giving me there. For the body I will use mole's fur in brown. Well, let me show you this side, it's a little bit better. Yeah, like this. Flashback, you can use one of these flash materials, flash tinsels, but in my case, for this fly, I will use just a piece that I collected from a Christmas tree ornaments. So you can use anything that's available for you. For thorax, I will use ice dubbing in peacock color. And I love it because it will give me a very pheasant tail look. So brown fur resembles pheasant tail, and then peacock also resembles real peacock. Peacock dubbing resembles peacock in classic pheasant tail or American pheasant tail, or rather. So those two materials are very important for me, and I think that they are great. For legs, I will use black CDC. Because it's dark, it's very easy to see underwater, and CDC or any other feather that you have available that's soft hackle you can use. It's just important to give some movement to your fly. So I'll start with hook size 14 and 3.3mm jig of bead. Indent side goes towards the eye, so I can push it and leave all of the shank exposed for my fly. I'll start with Semperfli Nano Silk 18/0 in red. Red kind of matches brown color of my brown fur that I will be using for abdomen. And I'll run the thread a couple of times through the beeswax to make more friction between thread and the hook shank. With flat thread, I'll cover the hook shank. You can see it's flat. I'll cover the hook shank almost all. Well, it's all, and the reason behind it is I don't want this thread and the whole fly to rotate under any circumstances, because it will be connected to the bead. This bead doesn't have a slot that will fit around this angle here, so you need to fix it somehow else. I'll place the wire on the far side, it's your near side, but since I'm using my Renzetti, I will actually be able to make it more visible for me, so I'll rotate the fly, putting it on the side and so on. Now everything is tightly tied, and I can proceed with thread and push the bead against the eye. Now make a couple of figure of eights. Wait.
couple of figure of eights between the hook shank and the eye, fixing the bead in position. Now, again, flatten the thread, you don't want build-up, and then cover a little bit of hook. So this time it's kind of half or a little bit more. And I'm doing so to create a slight taper. Again, I'm doing this fixing the bead thing. Again, counterspin the bobbin holder, flatten the thread a little bit, and this time go less, and then one more time. I'm using a lot of pressure here, as you can see. I'm even holding it with my fingers, and then flatten the thread again, and that's it. Now at this moment I can add tail. For tail, I said I will use a classic rooster feather in grizzly color. You can use Coq de Leon or whatever you want, not so important because it's going to be sparse and short. It has tail only and only because I just think it looks better, not because I think fish will care. When you decide on the length of the feather, just place it on the top of the hook shank, counterspin the bobbin holder to get more control over your thread, and then fix this on the top of the hook shank, keeping the wire at the same side as you tied it in already. Now comes the tricky part. Well, tricky, it's not tricky, it just needs more attention. Number one, if you have dry hands, try to make some friction between your fingers, because with dry hands you won't be able to properly dub this mole's fur. It's short dubbing, very short hair, so it needs a bit of skill to dub properly. If you have dry hands, you won't be able to stick it against your thread. So you can use saliva, just touch your tongue, which is not very hygienic, or damp cloth or whatever, or you can just rub your fingers against the wax. When you have some friction between your fingers, proceed with dubbing. Take a tiny bit of dubbing for the first batch, press it against the thread from the downside, creating this kind of a V shape, and then just push your fingers against each other in one motion like this, and then repeat the motion a couple of times, but always in the same direction, preferably in counterclockwise direction if you look from above. As you can see, I created rather thin and super compact tapping noodle, which is perfect. I want it as thin, as compact as possible to recreate properties of pheasant tail barbs. Those small hairs will imitate pheasant tail barbules. So those small tiny hairs that you can see on the pheasant tails when you wrap it, those are barbules, and I want to imitate them with fur. So that's why I need to make it very tight. Now next clump should be slightly bigger. I'm counting hairs here, not literally, but it's there. So just use a lot of force when you're dubbing it, and it's better to use less for start and add it later than to use too much and ruin everything. I mean, you'll have to remove it if you want to get the effect I'm talking about. Now I'm making it as tight as possible. It looks like a rope. So one, and press and press and roll, press and roll, press and roll. Like, make your fingers get white. Well, fingernails, not fingers. Now again, same thing. You will have way more control over how you are wrapping your body if you make thin dubbing noodle, because with thick dubbing noodle you are not able to correct anything. So here I can see a little bit of thread showing through, so just add some dubbing over that and kind of correct my dubbing noodle. Now it's time to wrap. And obviously I'm going to wrap it in the same way as I was wrapping thread, because there's no other way you can do it. But I'm using a lot of pressure on this. I want it to stay on the hook. And as you can see, it really kind of resembles pheasant tail. Let me see. Nice taper, nice and compact, and just enough room for the thorax and legs. Now, the reason why I placed the wire the way I did is because when I wrap it counterclockwise, it will pop up and show very nicely over the dubbing, as opposed if I was wrapping it same way as the thread and dubbing, so in this direction, over and under, the wire may go in between those wraps and hide itself. Now, something that you may forgot but I didn't is flash, and I'll just use kind of unusual way to do it. First, slight wrap, and then use thread torque to push it where you want it, okay? So I want it on the top of the hook. You can correct it now, okay? Okay, let me just fold this back. Yes, this is it. Now it's locked. I have it flat and nice on the top of the hook shank. Now there is wire, and okay. Now first wrap is a tricky one, yeah, because you need to do everything right. As you can see, by wrapping it this way, I avoided the tail, so I don't displace the tails. If the wire was from my side, my first wrap would go over the tails, push them away because I need some tension, and then the nymph won't look as good as it would look as if it'll look right now. Now no pressure, and then go up, upward motion, no pressure, upward motion, and then no pressure and upward motion. Now let me check on everything. Looks good, looks nice. When I get onto this bare end here, I'll just wrap a couple of wraps with my thread, secure the wire, and then I'll place the wire against the shank, along the shank, not against it, like so, and then break it off. By this way, doing it this way, I'll get wider shank, which may be important if you're doing some wing case cover. Obviously you saw that this should have been cut before, but yeah, let's do it now. Don't cut it too tight to the first wrap, just leave a little tag over here. It won't bother anything, it just will reflect even more, and it looks good if you ask me. So you can see wire perfectly, you can see tail, flashback. Time to add some CDC. Now, as you can see, I've been using this CDC for my nymphs, and I like to take it like this, symmetrical. So I take one side, pinch out a couple of barbs, and place them towards the eye. Pinch wrap and pull. 1, 2, 3. Cut the excess. You don't need much. As you can see, I'm not using too many wraps around here and not too many barbs, just a little bit to suggest movement. And I think that black legs are more visible than any other color for this matter, so I'll just use those barbs in black, and I think they match very nicely the color of the nymph. So again, pinch and wrap. This was probably the single most important thing I've learned by watching Oliver Edwards' videos as a kid. Pinch wrap. That's something that helped me a lot. Now, as you can see, I have quite a bit of room here for the thorax. I secure the legs, and then it's time to add thorax. Okay, Now for thorax, I'll use peacock dubbing. And I'm using this Royal CC ice dub, which has much finer fibers than, for example, hairline. That was my favorite before, but now not so much, because they just don't have as fine dubbing as before. And for smaller flies, finer diameter fibers are definitely better choice. So use, again, less dubbing than you probably would use usually, and create nice and thick dubbing, nice and thin dubbing noodle that's compact. It will last longer. It will when you mount it on the fly. Also, thin dubbing noodle is easier to wrap. It's definitely, it has more benefits. So I'll just go and wrap it here, creating a little bit of taper towards the front of the fly. When I reach legs, I may add a little bit more for a start. When I reach legs, it's the time to do the whip finish. I don't want to catch this leg. Okay, just creating relatively thick thorax, and now I'll wax the thread to prevent slipping and untying of whip finish knot. Never happened, but just being paranoid a little bit probably helps the durability of my flies sometimes. So I'll do the whip finish knot, and the easiest way to do it is the way you do it usually. I sometimes use my hand, sometimes use my whip finishing tool, but go and slide the knot down the bead. Okay, just slide it down the bead, tighten it. I like to do 2 whip finish knots on most of my flies, especially with something as slippery as GSP, even though I used wax to make it less slippery. But yeah, let's make it 2 because it's thin, it won't even show, as you can see. And that's it. So guys, let me repeat the question. Do you think this fly can actually substitute for pheasant tail? Do you think it's like equally good? And what would be your suggestion? What would be your substitute for pheasant tail? Because this is definitely more durable one, and I think that this can be a very good substitute as long as you have confidence in this fly. One of the things I believe that is very important for fishing is confidence in what you are actually using. If you don't believe in your fly, you won't be focused on your fishing 100%. You will be focused on if I had this fly or if I had that fly, and you would just think and overthink, and you won't be focused 100% on fishing. As opposed to if you have a confident fly, you use it, you just focus on fishing, on presentation, and you get your fish after fish after fish. That's why we all use different flies, and we catch fish sometimes in same conditions, meaning that it's more of a confidence than it's a pattern. And I hope you like techniques involved in this video. They are the most important thing here, if you ask me, not the pattern itself. So that would be it. Until next time, please keep safe and tight lines.